So here's a question for you. What does it even mean to be a dove of peace, especially when you're surrounded by conflict? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty provocative idea from our source material. This vision of Turkey as, get this, the world's lone peacemaker. Yeah, let's unpack that. Okay, our starting point is this image right here, straight from the source material. It paints this picture of Turkey as this calm center, in a region just full of chaos. And the claim it makes? Wow, it's incredibly bold. The world's only dove of peace country. I mean, that's not a small statement, right? So you got to ask, how on earth do they justify that? And this really gets to the heart of the puzzle, doesn't it? A dove of peace smack dab in the middle of a ring of fire. I mean, it just feels like a complete contradiction. But the source material says, hold on, there's a unique logic to this. So, all right, let's follow their line of thinking and see where it takes us.
First things first. The sources argue that if you really want to understand the case for peace, you actually have to start with the stark reality of war.
And they really paint a picture here. I mean, just look. They lay out conflict in literally every direction. You've got the Ukraine-Russia war to the north. Head northeast, you've got the Caucasus. Down south, Syria, Iraq, and all those ongoing tensions. And to the west, well, the historical conflicts in the Balkans. The whole point they're making is that this nation is sitting right at the epicenter of constant regional instability.
And the source grounds this whole reality in one really powerful idea. Geography is destiny. The point they're trying to make is that this isn't some passing phase. They see it as a permanent condition, one that absolutely forces a very specific kind of response. So, okay, what do you do if your destiny is to live in a really dangerous neighborhood? Well, the source's answer is pretty clear. Having a strong military isn't about aggression, it's about survival. It's just the price you pay. The argument is super simple, right? A dove can't exactly survive surrounded by predators if it doesn't have some sharp talents. So, in this view, strength is the only thing that actually makes peace possible.
Okay, so next up, the source kind of shifts gears. It offers this philosophical lens to explain not just where conflicts are happening, but the much deeper question of why they happen in the first place.
The first key concept they introduce is this idea of fitna, which you can translate as strife. But it's not just about an external battle. Think of it more like a social poison. It's that state where truth gets so tangled up with lies that nobody knows what to believe. People stop trusting each other, and the whole fabric of society just starts to crack from the inside out.
So what's the antidote to that social poison, to fitna? Well, according to this framework, it's adalat, or justice. And again, we're not just talking about laws and courtrooms here. The source defines this as something much bigger, like the fundamental force that holds everything, society, maybe even the entire cosmos, in perfect balance.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The source actually splits this idea of justice in two. On one hand, you have absolute justice. That's the pure, untouchable ideal where even one single innocent person's rights are sacred. But then on the other hand, you have relative justice. And that's the messy reality of politics, right? It's about choosing the lesser of two evils to get to the greater good. And the source is careful to stress that the goal is always absolute justice, even when the real world forces you to make tough compromises.
And all of this finally leads us to savage, or war. Now, according to this whole framework, war is never the goal. It's not something you want. It's what happens when justice completely fails. It's seen as the absolute last resort, a very limited and legitimate action you only take to defend yourself or to stop some kind of terrible oppression.
And this slide here, it just lays out that whole chain of events perfectly. According to the source, this is how it all goes down. Step 1, fitna rises, and truth gets all blurry. That directly leads to step 2, adalat collapses, and that social balance is lost. The final and what they call inevitable result? Step 3, war. It's presented as this direct, almost cause and effect path.
Okay, so if that's the diagnosis for what causes conflict, then what's the cure? Where does this whole peace spirit idea supposedly come from? Well, the source argues it's deeply rooted in both history and ideology. The source really points to 4 key pillars holding this peace spirit up. First, there's the Islamic heritage, that core idea of standing against oppression and siding with the oppressed. Second is the Ottoman legacy, this tradition of ruling over all sorts of different peoples with the principle of being strong but just. Third, there's a national memory of hardship, of being invaded, which they say creates a real empathy for others who are suffering. And finally, this ideal they call Nizam al-Alam, which is this sense of responsibility to help bring order and justice to the whole world. And this popular slogan, you've probably heard it,
is presented as the modern-day expression of that exact spirit. The world is bigger than five. That five, of course, is talking about the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. It's a direct challenge, really, to the whole idea that just a handful of powerful nations should get to decide the fate of the entire world.
So, okay, how does all of this scale up? Well, the final section of the source's argument takes this from just a national policy to a full-blown vision for the entire world.
See, the source argues this isn't just about one country's foreign policy. No, it's being offered up as an ideal prototype, a whole different way forward for any nation out there that's looking for an alternative to a world that seems to be driven only by materialism, by money and power.
And at the core of this vision is a pretty radical shift in how we measure a nation's greatness. It suggests we should stop weighing success by things like GDP or how much territory a country has. Instead, the argument is that a nation's true value lies in its conscience value. You know, what it actually contributes to justice and humanity as a whole. And so the source material leaves us with this one last, really challenging question. It reframes the great struggle of our time, not as, East versus West, but as materialism versus meaning. It asks all of us to think about it. In a world that's so often about cold, hard power, what role, if any, is there for something like a national conscience, someone to think about?